and welcome to the next home learning video. I hope it finds you safe and well and that you've been enjoying the sunshine. For this week's home learning video, I'm going to set you an online challenge, and then we'll be looking at a new story by Michael Morpurgo called The Giant's Necklace. It's set in Cornwall, which is one of my favourite places in the whole of England. This will be followed by the shout-out so that you can see what lovely work you've been sending in. So, for the Online Safety Challenge, I'm going to ask you to create an online safety resource for children to inform them about how to stay safe online. You might want to create a poster, a PowerPoint, a video, a news article, a cartoon strip, a leaflet, or anything else that you can think of. Be creative. You might want to choose an app or a game that you've used and tell people how to use this safely. You might want to consider what we should or shouldn't post online. You might want to think about online bullying or screen addiction, or think about pop-ups and scams. There are so many things that you can think about. We'll now look at the posters that we have up around school, just to remind you. The first one is the Yuppie poster of how we protect our personal information online. So Yuppie stands for your name, addresses, phone numbers, passwords and your plans. We should never share any of these online. The next poster is the Zip It, Block It, Flag It poster. Zip It means keep your personal stuff private and think about what you say and do online. Block It means to block people who send nasty messages and don't open unknown links and attachments. And the last one, Flag It, means to flag up with someone you trust if anything upsets you or if someone asks to meet you offline. The last poster is the CEOPS sign called Click CEOPS. And if you see this online, you can click on it and it will take you to the Internet Police where you'll be able to report things that have upset you. You might want to use some of the ideas from the posters that we use around school in your resource, or you might want to have a look at the posters in the next few pictures on the video and they might give you some idea. Remember, it doesn't have to be a poster, it could be all the other things that we talked about. A PowerPoint, a news report, a cartoon strip. Just get creative. Do whatever you would like. Then send in your resources to your class teacher on Class Dojo and we'd really look forward to seeing them. We're going to start a new story today. It's by Michael Morpurgo and it's called The White Horse of Zena. It's a book of short stories. I wonder when you look at the cover what you think the short stories might be about. All the stories in this book are set in Cornwall, which is in the far southwest corner of England. If we look at the blurb, it'll give you some idea about what some of the stories are like. It says, since the beginning of time, strange and mysterious things have happened here. At the furthest edges of Britain, where the sea gently washes over the land and myths brush against reality, lies Zena. Set in a church town where men become beasts and ghosts roam freely, are haunting and unforgettable tales where magic lies around every corner. The story that we've chosen is called The Giant's Necklace. The first part of the story is just a little introduction by Michael Morpurgo that tells you why he decided to write these stories. So, a mining story to start with. For many years, I used to go every summer to Zena. I read Cornish legends, researched the often tragic history of tin mining in Penrith, wandered the wild moors above Zena church town. I wrote a book of 5 short stories called The White Horse of Zena. This is the first. The necklace stretched from one end of the kitchen table to the other, around the sugar bowl at the far end and back again, stopping only a few inches short of the toaster. The discovery on the beach of a length of abandoned fishing line draped with seaweed had first suggested the idea to Cherry, and every day of the holiday since then had been spent in one single-minded pursuit, the creation of a necklace of glistening pink cowrie shells. She had sworn to herself and to everyone else that the necklace would not be complete until it reached the toaster, and when Cherry vowed she would do something, she invariably did it. Cherry was the youngest in a family of older brothers, 4 of them, who had teased her relentlessly since the day she was born 11 years before. She referred to them as the 4 mistakes, for it was a family joke that each son had been an attempt to produce a daughter. To their huge delight, Cherry reacted passionately to any slight or insult, whether intended or not. Their particular targets were her size, which was diminutive compared with theirs, and her dark flashing eyes that would wither with one scornful look. Her zapping look, they called it. Although the teasing was interminable, it was rarely hurtful, nor was it intended to be, for her brothers adored it, and she knew it. Cherry was poring over her necklace, still in her dressing gown. Breakfast had just been cleared away, and she was alone with her mother. She fingered the shells lightly, turning them gently until the entire necklace lay flat, with the rounded pink of the shells all uppermost. Then she bent down and breathed on each of them in turn, polishing them carefully with a napkin. "There's still the sea in them," she said, to no one in particular. "You can smell it. And I washed them, you know." "You've only got today, Cherry," said her mother, coming over to the table and putting an arm around her. "Just today, that's all. We're off back home tomorrow morning, first thing. Why don't you call it a day, dear? You've been at it every day. You must be tired of it by now. There's no need to go on, you know. We all think it's a fine necklace, quite long enough. It's long enough, surely?" Cherry shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "Only that little bit left to do, and then it will be finished." "But they'll take hours to collect, dear," her mother said weakly, recognising and at the same time respecting her daughter's persistence. "Only a few hours," said Cherry, bending over, her brows furrowing critically as she inspected a flaw in one of her shells. "That's all it'll take. Do you know, there are 5,325 shells in my necklace already. I counted them, so I know." "Isn't that enough, Cherry?" her mother said desperately. "No," said Cherry. "I said I'd reach the toaster, and I'm going to reach the toaster." Her mum turned away to continue the drying up. "Well, I can't spend all day on the beach today, Cherry," she said. "If you haven't finished by the time we come away, I'll have to leave you there. We're going to pack up and tidy the house. There'll be no time in the morning." "I'll be all right," said Cherry, cocking her head on one side to view the necklace from a different angle. "There's never been a necklace like this before. Not in all the world. I'm sure there hasn't. And then you can leave me there, Mum, and I'll walk back. It's only a mile or so along the cliff path, and half a mile back across the fields. I've done it before, on my own. It's not far." There was a thundering on the stairs, and a sudden rude invasion of the kitchen. Cherry was surrounded by her 4 brothers, who leant over the table in mock appreciation of her necklace. "Oh, pretty. Do they come in other colours? I mean, pink's not my colour." "Who's it for? An elephant?" "It's for a giant," said Cherry. "It's a giant's necklace, and it's still not big enough." It was the perfect answer, an answer she knew would send her brothers into fits of laughter. She loved to make them laugh at her, and could do it at the drop of a hat. Of course, she no more believed in giants than they did, but it tickled them pink to believe she did. Then why not pretend? She turned on them, fists flailing, and chased them back up the stairs, her eyes burning with simulated fury. "Just 'cause you don't believe in anything except motorbikes and football and all that rubbish, just 'cause you're great, big, fat, ignorant pigs." She hurled insults up the stairs, and the worse the insult, the more they loved it. Boat Cove, just below Zena Head, was the beach they had found and occupied. Every year, for as long as Cherry could remember, they had rented the same granite cottage, set back in the fields below the Eagle's Nest, and every year they came to the same beach because no one else did. In 2 weeks not another soul had ventured down the winding track
through the bracken from the coastal path. It was a long climb down and a very much longer one up. The beach itself was almost hidden from the path that ran along the cliff top 100 feet above. It was private and perfect, and theirs. The boys swam in and amongst the rocks, diving and snorkelling for hours on end. Her mother and father would sit side by side on stripy deck chairs. She would read endlessly, and he would close his eyes against the sun and dream for hours on end. Cherry moved away from them and clambered over the rocks to a narrow strip of sand in the cove beyond the rocks. And here it was that she mined for the cowrie shells. In the gritty sand under the cliff face, she had found a particular rich deposit. She was looking for pink cowrie shells of a uniform length, colour and shape. That was what took the time. Occasionally the boys would swim around the rocks and into her little beach, emerging from the sea all goggled and flippered to mock her. But as she paid them little attention, they soon tired and went away. She knew time was running short. This was her last chance to find enough shells to complete the giant's necklace, and it had to be done. The sea was calmer that day than she had ever seen it. The heat beat down from a windless, cloudless sky. Even the gulls and kittiwakes seemed to be silenced by the sun. Cherry searched on, stopping only for a picnic lunch of pasties and tomatoes with her family before returning at once to her shells. In the end, the heat proved too much for her mother and father, who left the beach earlier than usual in mid-afternoon to begin to tidy up the cottage. The boys soon followed because they had tired of finding miniature crabs and seaweed instead of sunken wrecks and treasure they had been seeking. So by tea time, Cherry was left on her own on the beach with strict instructions to keep her hat on, not to bathe alone, and to be back well before dark. She had calculated she needed 150 more cowrie shells, and so far she had only found 50. She would be back, she insisted, when she had finished collecting enough shells, and not before. Had she not been so immersed in the search, sifting the shells through her fingers, she would have noticed the dark grey blank of cloud rolling in from the Atlantic. She would have noticed the white horses gathering out at sea, and the tide moving remorselessly in to cover the rocks between her and Boat Cove. When the clouds cut out the warmth from the sun as evening came on, and the sea turned grey, she shivered with cold and put on her sweater and jeans. She did look up then, and saw the angry sea, but she saw no threat in that, and did not look back over her shoulder to Boat Cove. She was aware that time was running out, so she went down on her knees again and dug feverishly in the sand. She had to collect 30 more shells. It was the baleful sound of the foghorn somewhere out at sea beyond Gunnard's Head that at last forced Cherry to take some account of the incoming tide. She looked for the rocks she would have to clamber over to reach Boat Cove again, and the winding track that would take her up the cliff path and safely, but they were gone. Where they should have been, the sea was already driving in against the cliff face. She was cut off. In a confusion of wonder and fear, she looked out to sea, at the heaving ocean that moved in towards her, seeing it now as a writhing grey monster, breathing its fury on the rocks and every pounding wave. Still Cherry did not forget her shells, but wrapping them inside her towel, she took them into her sweater and waded out through the surf towards the rocks. If she timed it right, she reasoned, she could scramble back over them and into the cove as the surf retreated. She reached the first of the rocks without too much difficulty. The sea here seemed to be protected from the force of the ocean by the rocks further out. Holding fast to the first rock she came to, and with the sea up around her waist, she waited for the next incoming wave to break and retreat. The wave was expectantly impotent and fell limply on the rocks around her. She knew her moment would come and took it. She was not to know that piling up far out at sea was the first of the giant storm waves that had gathered several 100 miles in the Atlantic, bringing with it all the momentum and violence of the deep ocean. The rocks were slippery underfoot, and more than once Cherry slipped down into seething white rock pools where she had played so often when the tide was out. But she struggled on until, finally, she had climbed high enough to be able to see the thin strip of sand that was all that was left of Boat Cove. It was only a few yards away, so close. Until now, she had been crying involuntarily, but now, as she recognised the little path up through the bracken, her heart was lifted with hope and anticipation. She knew that the worst was over, that if the sea would only hold back, she would reach the sanctuary of the cove. She turned and looked behind her to see how far away the next wave was, just to reassure herself that she had enough time. But the great surge of green water was on her before she could register either disappointment or fear. She was hurled back against the rock below her and covered at once by the sea. She was conscious, as she went down, that she was drowning, but she still clutched her shells against her chest and hoped she had enough of them at last to finish the giant's necklace. These were her thoughts before the sea took her away. Well, I hope you enjoyed the beginning of the story, The Giant's Necklace, and I can't wait to see what happens to Cherry next week. I hope she's safe.